Although NAKAI is seen as a bit of a meme, he does have one feature that makes him very unique and potentially very, very powerful. This item right here gives area of effect perfect vigor, the golden tributes. And the issue is that it does have a relatively small area of effect, meaning it's really only good in a blob type situation. However, there is one matchup where you may want to blob, of course, against the vampire counts. This is a replay from a stream I did yesterday on Anticity's Ladder. For those of you guys who don't know what that is, go ahead and check the stream out. Basically just a improved ranking ladder quick battle system, more or less, run through Anticity's Discord. Anyway, a couple of the recent changes to the Lizardmen have sort of enabled a build like this to work better. One of them is the Oracle, who double shot now has been fixed, so I don't feel as bad using him. He's got Earthblood, of course, for some healing. I meant to bring Harmonic Convergence, but this Wind Blast is actually going to do me quite well against the hordes of zombies. For additional healing, we've also got the Rev Crystal, so these two together, I can pretty much heal cap NAKAI if I need to, or, you know, if the Oracle or either of these Bastillodons, the other one being an Arc of Sotek for DPS, can heal those up as well. We've got a Saurus Scarvet just for one more cheap anti-large AP single entity to help protect some of this stuff. And then a staunch box of Saurus Spears. We've got 4 Saurus Spears, 2 with shields, 2 without, Star Chamber Guardians, and the Unbreakable cohort of Sotek. I'm up against Machine Gun Gorst. MGG over here blasting away with a Gaze of Nagash. He's going to go ahead and reload his Glock and blast another one as the Oracle shoots back at the other Necromancer. On a corpse cart, we've got 2 Vargulfs as well, 3 Crypt Horrors, Skeleton Warriors, got some Grave Guards, I believe. Yeah, a couple of Grave Guards here. One with Grey Weapons, the other one is the Sternsman. So not too much elite infantry, but a little bit. And plenty of monstrous power. The issue here is that Crypt Horrors in, you know, in a vacuum, will trade absolutely horribly into Saurus Spears. With zombie support and with healing, they can definitely trade better, and especially if the Saurus get worn down in terms of vigor, they'll get tired, their armor will go down, their other stats will go down, they'll take more damage, and they won't dish out as much damage. Saurus are already pretty slow anyway, so if they get even slower, that is an issue, but right now, we're still just trading here. I'm going to pop that Opal Amulet to eat that one more Gaze of Nagash from Gorst. He's used up quite a bit of Winds of Magic at this point, trying to snipe the Oracle. I've still got that Opal Amulet up and kind of screening this Vampirus who's up in the air through the Saurus Spears. Their huge mass going to mean that she can't really respond too well, but now frontline engagement getting underway. We're going to just charge in here, countercharge in with the Spears, the Temple Guards, get the Cohort of Sotek specifically onto the Grave Guards with Great Weapons here. And then bring NAKAI in, of course, as well. We've got the Saurus Scarvet still just kind of hanging around in case this Vampirus is going to try and finish off the Oracle, which she is. So we're going to just pressure again with the Scarvet. NAKAI, Lollipop out, going to charge in here straight to where Gorst and the Sternsmen are. Try and get some damage on Gorst. Obviously, NAKAI's mass buff greatly helped him as well. He's definitely a lot more viable in that he can kind of charge around, just absolutely chad through these Graveguard like they're not even there. Go ahead and get a Sneck drop going as well, so big old AoE, not quite Mortis Engine effect, but as close as you can get with the Lizardmen. Meanwhile, Rev Crystal, Cold-Blooded, keeping the Skink Oracle in the fight. I've got him kind of close by here, just in case, you know, when I do get those Earthbloods, just like this, I'm hitting a couple of these other units, just to help sustain them. Haven't lost too many models here, so they get a little bit of extra healing. And really the idea here is just try and outgrind. It's tricky, and with the right Vampire Counts build, it's almost impossible to outgrind them. But in a situation like this, where my Saurus trading very well with the Crypt Horrors, they're trading great with the Skeletons, the Graveguard with Great Weapons already got melted by the Cohort of Sotek there. You can see in terms of binding, really, so far, only the Vargulfs are starting to get tired, but everything of mine is fresh, right? Because it's a relatively tight engagement here. NAKAI can come in and sort of hit all of these units with his area of effect. You can see it active as I sort of mouse over these different units here. So that is helping to counteract. One of the biggest things with Vampire Counts is just slogging through hordes of zombies. As Gorst goes for another shot there, it uses so much vigor, right? So we're going to hit another Rev Crystal here. Skink Oracle quickly approaching his healing cap, but I've been able to just sustain because of this double healing. And look at that arc with the spit there. Really nicely done. Vampirus is going to charge back in, but at this point, the Oracle on the Trago boy has plenty of HP, and he's going to get some pretty good attack rolls here and just absolutely dump on the Vampirus. She's going to crumble and retreat there. Not to mention, I've still got this Saurus Scarvet, who's more or less completely healthy, basically like a single entity Temple Guard for a little bit cheaper. We're starting to run low on one unit of Saurus here, but look, even still fresh, Gorst himself is getting drained. You know, the Vargulfs are getting drained. A lot of this stuff for the vampire counts is starting to tire out. Out on here in the periphery, I'm getting a couple of units that are starting to get a little tired, but as they come in the area of effect, you see that little vigor icon refresh. By the way, if you're wondering how you get the vigor icons to show, it's in here. You got these, you know, unit status icons. You go ahead and hit this little lock button, it'll stay up. Some people ask me about that sometimes. Just a little bit of a quick tip, but yeah, Rev Crystal does go down here, which is not great. Kind of gets caught out away from the rest of my forces, but I've gotten most of the value that I wanted from it at this point. Probably, what, 3 or 4 heal procs, which is not ideal, but still enough to keep the Skink Oracle sustained. So, I mean, tactically, mission accomplished, right? Keep it close and cinematic as Gorst, the other Necromancer, continue to fight here with their Sternsmen and whatnot. Get some more zombie summons to try and sustain, but at this point, I mean, the Saurus and the Temple Guard have taken so little damage. A Court of Sotek as well, taking some pretty good damage, but that too adorable to die, or rather refuse to die ability means their unit models will not go down. They could potentially be healed by even more Earthbloods. NAKAI just having a grand old time with his big lollipop bopping around. Another Sneck drop here. Even though I'm against primarily single entities at this point, it still does a little bit of a decent dot effect. It's basically like doubling Crumbling more or less here, which we do have a couple of units going into Crumbling. But Gorst is probably getting insane value draining right now, but he just doesn't have the sustain to be able to continue to drain. I mean, obviously, if he had you know, just infinite units to fight on top of, he could try and drain out my whole army, although Gorst himself is getting pretty low at this point. NAKAI just proccing his charging animation, running around. One thing about Vigor, I guess a couple of things about Vigor. Number one is charging uses more Vigor than any other action in the game. So with a Lord like NAKAI, you know, since obviously he's always going to be in his own area of effect, having perfect Vigor, more or less, you can keep him cycle charging super aggressively around to different targets, just like this, like click that target, click this target, and because his charge animation is pretty impactful, it's pretty like big, sweeping, will push through a lot of units, you can cycle charge with him very aggressively. Even though his charge bonus is only, you know, 32, which is really not great, that's still 92 effective attack on the charge, which is great. Gets a little quick punch there, just punches the Vargulf out. Wow, full-on left jab knockout punch to the face. Gorst goes down to the Temple Guard, and that's going to be game. Great game to tank. Yeah, it's a fun one. If you watch the stream back, you can see me kind of constructing this build and saying to myself, like, I don't know if this is actually going to work. It's often how I feel about builds. I mean, there is some thought that goes into it, right? Like, obviously, I have the multiple healing tools. I've got the DPS as well to fight through blobs. And to help clear out the hordes. Ark of Sotek, speaking of which, 2,000 damage value. This thing is insane right now. Super strong in those horde-centric matchups where you're going to be fighting a lot of chaff. You have to grind through. Lizardmen don't really have a lot of other tools that are great for grinding through chaff, so that's great. Court of Sotek, 100 kills. Not that much damage value, but the Star Chamber Guardians and pretty much all of the Saurus get really good value as well. NAKAI himself, 2,000 damage value, fantastic. Saurus Scarvet pays for himself also, and the Oracle survives unchivalrous Gorst snipe attempt. Yeah, managed to sustain that fight. Also got one Wind Blast, I didn't really highlight, but it did okay. Rev Crystal's mostly just here to heal, and yeah, it gets a little bit of damage. Regardless, Gorst, as we would expect. Ooh, my mouse is kind of bugging out a little bit here. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, 4,000 damage value on Gorst, as to be expected, just draining a massive blob of troops. Thankfully, we were able to cut through the rest of the army quick enough that it didn't end up mattering too much at the end of the day. Basically, nothing else in the Vampire Count's army is going to pay for itself, except for this one Fellbat. Nope, that was actually, no, the Crypt Horror damage value. Yeah, basically everything else doesn't pay for itself, which is, you know, unfortunate. I'm not really the biggest fan of Crypt Horrors in this matchup. Vargulfs can be good, but Sora Spears are common enough, and they just absolutely dump all over Crypt Horrors. Like, it's one of the worst trades, probably from Monstrous Infantry into an equally costed infantry unit. I would definitely go with either Cavalry here, or else just more Graveguard, honestly. If you're looking for kind of a drain-oriented build where you want to just keep the battle going for as long as you can, more or less, I'd maybe go with one Cavalry, maybe one Black Knight, just with the regular swords, to screen for Gorse, so you have a little bit of mass so that he's not getting caught as much by NAKAI or other high mass units, and then cut these Crypt Horrors and just bring Graveguard in their place, I would think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Tank, definitely a very solid Vampire Accounts player. I'm curious to get your thoughts as well if you end up commenting on this. But yeah, fun use of NAKAI. I still don't think, I mean, he's not going to be meta in a lot of other matchups by any means, but I hesitate to call this meta just because I think a really aggressive, like, sniping build via different means from Vampire Counts could potentially take him out. But like there, Tank chose to prioritize the Oracle, which makes sense given that the Oracle is the one actually healing, right? So it's tough to say in that situation who you should prioritize. The kit I had for NAKAI was relatively cheap, didn't even have his big buff, which, if you have the gold for it, it's definitely worth it. All I had was the perfect vigor, so, I mean, it definitely makes sense to go for the Oracle over NAKAI, given that Oracle's more expensive and everything, but getting rid of NAKAI and that perfect vigor would be quite good as well. And even still, with both of those, I still kind of have some other distributed value targets, like 700 points for the Scarvet. They're really cheap, even though, again, his output is potentially a lot higher than that. Bestowed on Ark of Sotek, also very important target to take out. But I would be a little bit worried about something like, you know, an aggressive air snipe with maybe, you know, you could see, like, Goose and, or maybe Dragon and Goose, you know, something like this, with the Strigoi Vampire Lords, Strigoi Ghoul King, even a regular Goose, you know, something like, I don't know. Blood Knights I'm not really too worried about, because they're not going to do a lot to many units in my build. Like, I just don't have a lot that is susceptible to Blood Knights. If they were able to catch the Oracle out, away from support, they could probably do a lot of damage to him. You know, magic, like, or sorry, ethereal units I'm not really too scared of, just because and I have enough units with high enough weapon damage. The Oracle does not do magic damage with his missile attack, but even still, you know, I had the Star Chamber Guardians with magic damage there. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to kind of think about it a little bit, but the air snipe would really be the thing I'd be most worried about, given that they could potentially try and choose engagements a little bit wiser. Like, you know, I'd have to definitely be a little bit more conservative with my monsters, keeping them in a position to mutually support if anything charged down to the ground. And I don't have any really truly high mass units to block in, like Croc Scores or Cavalry. I'd have to use my single entities to try and block, which can be a little bit janky, you know, depending on positioning and speed and everything. Animations can also play into that big time as well if they move around a lot. But anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.